Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Deeper Podcast with Pastor Rusty. I'm Pastor Rusty, and this is...
I am Pastor Caleb.
Whoa.
Does that work?
Somebody upgraded himself. Caleb has ordained himself over the weekend. And no, I'm kidding. We call you all kinds of things. Pastor Caleb, Brother Caleb. My kids, you are Brother Caleb. Homeschool Caleb. I don't go with the homeschool. I'm pro homeschool, obviously. Yep. We homeschooled our kids before we came to... Buna.
Yeah.
Where do we live? Buna. Okay.
Yeah.
Seriously, yesterday during announcements, I'm spitting out VBS, and I was kind of in get her done mode, because you and I have talked about time in a worship service is valuable. Yeah. So just a little behind the scenes talk to kick off this episode. So it's like, we want to make sure you have enough time for all your music and that I've got enough time to teach the word. But you got to do announcements, and we're in that season where there's a bunch of announcements. Yeah. So I'm up there trying to rapid fire them off. I get to VBS. We're so pumped for VBS. Go to www, and I'm telling you, bro, I came so close to giving out my former church's URL.
Oh, no.
I was like, www.cbc. Yeah, it was close, but we caught it just in time.
Yeah.
Man. Speaking of VBS, 150 kids already registered.
And I looked at the website yesterday, and it's up to 176 kids.
That's crazy.
And like 50-something adult volunteers. So
that's absolutely
a lot of
nuts.
people. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. VBS is going to be so
and
much
we're really
fun.
at the beginning of the month still.
Yeah.
It's
like 3 or 4 weeks away.
Yeah.
3 weeks? Yeah, the 24th. So a little over 3 weeks.
Yep. It's going to be fun. It's going to be busy around here.
Actually, it's exactly 3 weeks from today.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Man, crazy. It's good times. God's doing some cool stuff around here.
He is.
We've got Producer Caleb in the chair. I've downgraded you from Pastor Caleb to Producer Caleb.
Producer Caleb.
Producer Caleb is in the seat today. Why are you here?
Well, Bryce and his youth, or some of his youth, are in Mission Arlington right now.
Yeah.
So
sent off a crew yesterday. They got there last night. Today's their first full day of ministry. By the time you watch this, either Monday night, Tuesday morning, man, pray for them. They've got a good week going. We're excited about everything God's doing with that. So
yeah, it's going to be really good.
But that leaves us here, and what we want to talk about today is what makes you angry.
Ooh,
Caleb, what makes you angry? Don't mention anything from home, or this is going to get really bad real fast.
I'm trying to think of something that makes me angry.
What a gentle soul sitting next to me. He never gets
I know
upset.
there's things that make me angry. I'm on the spot here. I don't want to say the wrong things.
Well, I mean...
just Henry when he says no.
Kids? We
yes.
Just say kids. Of course, you've got 2 little babies. They're, they're not at angry age making yet.
Yeah.
But, dude, shockingly, at a young age, they can kind of drive you crazy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Henry is right at nuisance age, for sure.
Yeah, no, but I love them, though.
Yeah, no doubt. We love them, but they can make us angry.
Mm-hmm,
Kid, that's not a bad answer, bro. Kids. Yeah, so things that make me angry. Here, I'll go with kind of a silly one that makes me like irrationally angry.
Yeah.
Is sports. And what's crazy to me, Mallory's always made fun of me because, like, I can watch a football game. For example, college football. I grew up not watching a lot of college football because we worked on Saturdays, at the store, so I didn't really get to watch college football growing up. And we would watch the national championship, though, because it'd be on like a Monday night.
Right.
And I would have never watched either of the 2 teams play, ever, all season. Didn't know anybody on either team. And by the end of that game, I would be like frustrated or mad if the team that I was pulling for lost. Ooh. It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst. And I would like to... Honestly, I don't watch a lot of sports because of that. Because I get very frustrated with like what happens with a bunch of 20-year-olds playing with a ball.
Right.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
So I've tried to, just don't watch as much sports these days.
Yeah, I've got one more that makes me angry.
Okay.
The Fausto's sign.
That you get irrationally angry at the Fausto sign. I don't know, Mr. and Ms. Riz Fausto. I apologize.
The jokes on the sign drive me crazy.
He legitimately is like, look at that. And I'm like, what? Like,
I don't know what it is.
Check out the low prices this week. Or Taylor Swift loves our chicken.
Our chicken crosses the road in a box.
Yes. All of these things frustrate Caleb. I drove by today. They've got a couple hot, fresh ones for you today. I saw them.
I
saw them changing the sign this morning, and it just did my heart good because I thought Caleb needs this.
They don't make sense.
Yes, you get irrationally angry about Fausto's sign. I'm so glad this came out publicly on the podcast.
You could do much better things with your sign, Faustos.
Oh, so mad. This is why we used to have a reader sign out front here at Central. We just went with the plain stone one that says Central.
Yeah.
Because I think the leadership knew Caleb would be frustrated with whatever we put out there.
Maybe.
If it said like a church without the UR and it said what's missing UR,
gosh.
you would have just like burned the church down. You would have been so upset.
Don't say that.
So, too soon. So here's the thing. We talked about anger yesterday. So all of that is, that witty banter is how we introduced the topic of our sermon yesterday, and really what we want to think about a little bit today, the issue of anger. Jesus addresses anger at a heart level, and really he starts by talking about murder, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have not been following along, it's kind of weird that you're watching the Deeper podcast in the middle of a sermon series, but we started where Jesus said, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. And we looked at each of these sections, how Jesus actually says, you've heard it said this, and he offers one of the 10 commandments or just another command that the religious leaders had. And he says, but I say to you, and really exposes the heart behind the command. So yesterday, the command we looked at was do not murder. Yeah. And on the front of it, most of us are like, yep, never killed anybody. Yep. And again, I have kids, so I've thought about it a time or two, but I've never killed anybody, right? So you're like, nope, I'm not a murderer. Fantastic. But Jesus says, but I say to you, if you've had anger towards a brother or sister, or then he ups the ante even more. Maybe you think, well, I mean, Rusty, he's kind of a type A. I get it. He's kind of a hothead. Okay, yeah, whatever. Characterize you however you want to say. Well, that's him or them, but it's not me. Jesus says, if anyone's insulted his brother or sister, so even just cut somebody down, all the way to if you have called someone a fool. And what we explained yesterday, the word fool in our society really is almost used flippantly today. Like, if I was like, man, quit being a fool. You're being foolish. That could sound very ugly in a certain sense, but in the Bible time, the term raka meant empty-headed, which didn't even mean like blockhead or silly or anything like that. It literally was to write someone off, to completely disregard them, to have such an attitude of superiority that you thought, this dude doesn't even matter. And Jesus says, if we've done that, then ultimately we're guilty of committing the sin of murder in our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you had talked about taking the life out of somebody in that sense, it kind of connects that to murder in a way. So
100%. Yeah. Like taking the life. Yeah. That it really kind of steals life from other people. I don't know. Did I say that in the sermon, or was that just me and you in the office last week?
Maybe. I think you did say something about stealing life, though.
Yeah, stealing life from others. Yeah. And what happens, the danger here is where we ultimately landed, is that when we are angry and it causes us to disregard others, what happens is when we write them off, we don't engage them anymore, and we let them, instead of engaging them with the love of Christ that we've been shown, we let them waltz away into an eternity in hell, separated from God. Yeah. And that's serious.
Yeah. And then you said in the sermon, you just said, you are all murderers.
That did get a little weird. So let me just encourage all of you. It was very quiet when I said that. They weren't prepared for that. So because that's a reality, though, when you look at that text and look at our lives, we're all guilty of doing those things. So the question becomes, what do we do? So we talked about the righteous response Jesus gives. Yeah. And what he basically said was what?
He said, reconcile with others.
Make it right.
And do it quickly.
Urgently. Yeah, this urgency was seen in the text twice in both scenarios. The first one's wild, right? Yeah. When you're at the altar making your gift, and this is where we kind of said for us in modern context, that would be wild enough. Could you imagine someone coming and praying at the altar yesterday morning and then being like, hold on, Caleb, keep praying. I got to go, to Kirbyville and reconcile with my brother, and I'll be back. Like, that would be crazy enough. But in our day, that's not as wild. Coming to the altar isn't what they're talking about here.
Right.
This would be the culmination of significant preparation, financial, purchasing an animal to sacrifice or raising an animal to sacrifice, traveling to the temple, probably standing in line, going through a significant process to get to this moment where finally you've made it to the altar and it's your turn to offer a sacrifice. And at that moment, Jesus says, if you realize you've got something against somebody or you've wronged somebody, leave your sacrifice there, go and reconcile.
Yeah, like the most important thing is for you to do that first.
Yeah.
Even though you've done all this preparation, spent all this money, the most important thing is to reconcile with your neighbors.
I love what Matthew Henry said in his commentary. Matthew Henry is a great commentary, by the way, free online. Anyone can find this. But Matthew Henry, great commentary. He said it's interesting to note that Jesus didn't say, forget your sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who almost use their anger and frustration or having a people problem as an excuse not to come to church.
Yeah.
And Jesus didn't say, forget the sacrifice. He said, no, go reconcile, then come make your sacrifice. Still fulfill what God has called you to do. You still need to be faithful to the Lord. Don't just say, well, I'm just not right with people, so I guess I'm just not going to go to church. That's not a good call, man. But go and deal with it, reconcile. And then the second scenario was if you're on your way to court, he said, settle that case, man.
Yeah.
You may feel pretty good about it, but what if you're wrong?
Yeah.
And you get thrown in jail till you pay the last penny. He said, reconcile while you still can. So you noted that quickly, that urgency that was in the text twice. You and I ought to have a heart to seek to be made right with our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just one of those things that, sometimes in an awkward situation or a situation that, is going to cause, some emotions or this or that, it is definitely pushed to the back of your to-do list.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I don't want to do that right now. I can't handle it or this or that. You know what I mean? And it's pushed to the back. So.
The awkward thing is some people, I think, are conflict averse.
Yeah.
And when you're conflict averse, what you actually end up doing is making a bigger conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want to talk to him about it. It'll be awkward. Well, guess what? The longer you wait, the more awkward it gets.
Yeah.
I think there's just some practical wisdom from Jesus there in saying, hey, if you got a problem with somebody or somebody has a problem with you, go and deal with it. The Bible says also not to let the sun go down on your anger.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us are very quick to let the sun go down on our anger. We let many moons go by while we let anger fester and develop. And I think that's something that we need to take from Jesus when he says, be quick to reconcile.
Yeah, and there's such an importance to me to reach out to the person that maybe you feel negative towards or you feel like they feel negative towards you, because what if those are just assumptions? What if what you're feeling is not what they meant by it, and you're sitting here not confronting them, then it just festers up in you and hurts your heart to something that really was nothing.
And honestly, I think that happens more often than not.
Yeah, and it's not really fair to that person if you think about it, because they haven't had a chance to say, well, hey, I did not mean it like that, but because you kind of keep it in and you don't confront
Well, and the
them.
thing we end up doing is, it's the opposite of love, right? What does Paul say in Romans, 1 Corinthians 13? We heard that at a wedding this weekend. Love keeps no record of wrongs.
Yeah.
When we don't have those conversations to reconcile with one another, what we end up doing is making like a dadgum resume of how this person has wronged us, or they've made a resume of how we've wronged them. And by the time you finally have this moment of reconciliation, it's like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah,
Like
just something starts off in just like a text message,
Yeah.
or something so small that gets blown up into something, and it's like, man.
Just because we don't know how to talk.
Yeah.
It's like basic communication skills. And I'll tell you, man, when it comes to being a pastor, a ministry leader, and I've talked to you guys about this, you and Bryce, just personally in our office, but even just talking with married couples, and even as a married man, Mallory and I have gone through this where it's like a simple conversation would have gone a long way.
Yeah.
And you just assume things. And when we assume things, man, our minds and our hearts, especially when they're not submitted to Jesus, become the enemy's playground.
Yeah.
And the enemy convinces us of all kinds of crazy things. And stuff like anger turns into much bigger things. And I'm angry, so now I'm going to talk ugly about somebody, whether to them or to others about them. And then that talking to other people turns eventually into saying, you know what, I'm not even going to fool with that person anymore.
Yeah, and the Lord knows this, and He says, "Do it quickly. Go talk to him
Make it
quickly."
right.
Because He knows the devil can use that time to stir that up and make it worse.
Yeah.
So not waiting. Well, it's probably not a good time right now. We'll do it later. Do it quickly. As soon as you can. So
Yeah. So I did give this one caveat, and I want to read it out of the scripture so I'm not making it up. I didn't do this yesterday, but Romans chapter 12, verse 18. And when I say caveat, I tried to be very careful to say yesterday, this does not free you from anything else the text has said so far. But here's what this verse says in Romans 12, 18. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So the idea of that is that sometimes in your attempt to reconcile, other people are unwilling to do that.
Yeah.
And you need to be prepared for that. And what I've had to learn over the years is, as far as it depends on me, be at peace with everyone.
Yeah.
There are people who get church hurt, and then they're going to put stuff on Facebook and say, the church hurt me. And it's like, man, I tried to come to your house to visit you and talk about what happened. I tried to email, text, and call, and you never responded. And now you're going to go on Facebook or start telling a bunch of people in the community. That's not happened here in Buna, but this has happened to me in the past. And it's like, man, I tried, and I find myself frustrated and hurt. And then I start thinking, what can I do to make this right? And the Lord, one day as I was doing my daily Bible reading, I read this verse, and it freed me so much from having to bear the burden of other people's sin problem.
Yeah.
Right? Or other people's working it out, right? Because there have also been times where that's happened, and months later, weeks later, days later, they've come to me and said, hey, I'm sorry, that wasn't right. And we have been able to reconcile. But there are some people to this day who have made assumptions about me that are not true, and that I did my best to try to be at peace with them, and they wouldn't hear it and wouldn't have it, and they are disconnected from me, and it hurts my heart to think about it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've done what the Lord told me to do.
Yeah.
I've urgently and as sincerely as I can have tried to be at peace. And because of that, the Lord in His grace gives me a peace about it. So when I even fret about that now, think about some of those people and those relationships, I have to remember to find my peace in Christ, because I've done everything He's commanded me to do, and just trust Him with whatever happens.
Yeah, and I think that would be an excuse people would use. It's like, I just know they're not going to forgive me. It's like, we should go into this reconciliation without something for ourselves, but giving peace, offering peace to them.
Yeah,
through just making that first move. So
yeah. So this anger is a challenging thing that all of us deal with. People problems, right? People are the worst. How do I know that? Because we're people. I'm people. I'm the worst.
Yeah.
And all of us are hard to deal with. All of us are difficult. And as we figure out this life thing, it gets messy.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended the message with, I think, an important conversation about the fruit of the Spirit. How do we do this? And I made the comment that Jesus doesn't give us a ton of practical tips. Instead, Jesus offers Himself. Yeah. And as we walk with Jesus, He changes us. And as He changes us, we exchange our anger and the things of the world, the works of the flesh, for this fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And man, God is so patient with us as we're growing, and the call for us ultimately becomes to be patient with the other people around us. And that's how we work on our anger, is by recognizing they are in progress, they're in process, and that's okay.
Yeah.
God's still working on them, and that's okay. It's hard for us to do, but that's where we got to get.
Yeah, I think you said that we can't do it alone, So we shouldn't expect others to do it alone. We should expect them to, help them grow maybe in that by extending that first, part of reconciliation.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we want to work towards. So, it was an interesting message. I'm excited to kind of continue this series, though. I told someone yesterday, we had a guest here, a pastor friend from Wichita, and I told him, I was like, man, this has been a harder series than I thought. And he started a church plant 6 years ago, and he said, we started with the Sermon on the Mount the same way. I thought, well, that'll be easy. And then you get into it, and you're like, this is hard.
Yeah.
So it's not easy teaching. In fact, this next week, we're going to be talking about sexual immorality. And we're going to take some time to unpack the text, but we're also just going to take some time to kind of give a broad overview of Christian sexual ethics.
Yeah.
What does sex look like within the bounds God has created it to be? Sex is an awesome gift that God has given us. You did want to amen that? All right. Guy with 17 kids over here. So, like, see, the awkwardness you feel right now is what's going to be in the room Sunday morning.
Yeah, right.
But we just want to talk honestly and openly about sex within the bounds God has created it to be and the blessing that it is, but how when we worship the gift instead of the gift giver, you have the product of our modern culture. So it's going to be an expository message, but we're going to kind of have a short exposition of the text, and then we're just going to take a little while to kind of just talk about it, because in 2024, in the modern church, our young people, our old people, and everybody in between, we need to just be reminded that this is the standard that Jesus has set. This is the path to blessing that he has called us to walk, and we need to be reminded of that in a culture that's preaching the complete opposite today.
Yeah, and I think I'm loving this series because the things that are in the Sermon on the Mount, I feel like are some of the things that bog down in our hearts the heaviest, you know, and keep us the furthest away from God when we struggle with them.
Certainly.
And so just to really break down these and really look at them, I think is good for the church. I think it's good for our hearts. So
yeah, it's going to be fun, dude.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. And also this next Sunday, we're baptizing several people. I think we've got 7 so far, and maybe a couple more that are checking schedules. Yeah, we're very thankful to the Lord for what he's doing.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be exciting Sunday.
It's going to be fun. All right. Well, don't forget, pray for our mission team and join us back here next Monday. Brother Caleb, producer Caleb, Pastor Caleb, and I are going to be back in these seats doing the same thing, except it'd be kind of a heavier conversation. He may be gone. Next week is going to be nobody sitting in that seat.
Take vacation.
It's just going to be me sitting here talking about sex on a podcast.
Gosh.
This may be our most listened to podcast ever.
We're going to get demonetized.
Demonetized? I don't know if that's how that works. All right. Hey, how do we end this thing?
I guess we point. Is that what
Thanks for watching.
Love you
this
guys.
is our thing now. Love y'all.